A couple of weeks ago, I was at an AI event here in Brussels. It was full of consultants, engineers, and me. And during the networking, I got to talk to at least two people, a consultant and an engineer exactly, who came up with the same questions I constantly get recently, which is, aren't you scared for your job? I mean, because of course, everybody thinks that as a teacher, AI is gonna kick me out of the job market. But I said, nope. And actually, I really mean it. Since AI got good enough to actually hold a conversation with you in another language, I've noticed something. Because there are still two things that at least AI cannot give my students. And this video is about these two things. I actually use AI every single day in my community, because the people who join it are supposed to actually pre-correct what they post through AI, and I give a last check. So for example, I check if AI missed something or if AI corrected something that was actually correct, that was actually, already fine. So it means I'm not really scared or precious about the tech. The grammar, the vocabulary draining, and the corrections are actually things that AI can handle pretty decently. But that is not anymore the part that I think it's actually my added value in my job. It was a little bit before, because my way of explaining stuff was actually how I got my first students. Still, my way of explaining stuff is relevant, but it comes in a second place. After COVID and all the mess we went through, my humanness is actually my actual added value. What it can do is ask you how you're doing. How was your week and so on. Knowing your full life picture that you cannot put into a prompt. It doesn't feel, of course, invested in whether you actually get to what you want, while I feel part of my students' mission. People push back a lot on this constantly because they tell me, yes, but AI doesn't judge you, that's why people actually replace therapy with AI. And I say, yes, it works for certain health stuff and it's actually right, but I think that people reach for AI for a different reason, because even if they can afford a therapist, AI is actually a way to pre-process things, and this is something that can help you be a little bit less vulnerable maybe, and pre-process, and I think it's totally fine. You come to the session, for example, if I imagine myself as a therapist, and also because I also used it sometimes before going to therapy, I came more conscious about what I was talking about. The thing is, of course, pre-processing isn't everything. If you have quit a language before, because of apps, classes, or I don't know, there was a tracker that you abandoned after 2 weeks, what actually gets you to the other side is something different, and usually it's a human. So one of my students, for example, told me once that she hoped she would have a life like the one I have someday. And I said, what? I would have never imagined something like that, honestly. She had been my student since 2021. She was actually one of my very first official students. And I still remember the day I taught her the Italian articles when she could barely put a sentence together. And now she speaks with the accents of the cities she lives in, and there is barely any foreign accent left, which is an absolute masterpiece in my opinion. In the last months, she's been hitting a quite heavy stretch because she's working on her master thesis. And some days, of course, she had nothing to say because she was just super tired. So I started talking about my life instead. For example, the events I go to, the struggles of building a network here as an immigrant, since she is an immigrant in Italy, and we would flag the words she didn't know and work through them together. At some point I felt a little bit guilty because I said, okay, I'm doing all the talking, since this was something that I really didn't like of my work with my previous with the teacher I had for private classes, exactly because I said, okay, I need to speak, but I'm too tired after work. The difference between me and my teacher is that, for example, I don't just talk. I talk and then explain stuff in her own language, which means Persian. We can do it thanks to AI. Also, in the way I explain stuff to her, I always try to find the lesson. I asked her if there was anything she would prefer talking about, and that's exactly when she told me about the fact that she found my life very interesting. But I think it's also because I always look for some kind of lesson in what I do, and that's the lens I talk to her through. This is also something that I missed with my previous teacher, because, she was, I don't know, I felt like she was a bit pissed off sometimes, or anyway, very serious during classes. And I can understand that she was maybe not super satisfied with her life, but I don't know, I try to be, I need to be positive. I can understand that my students have a life that is much harder and much more tiring than what I have. So I just say, okay, let's take advantage of my privilege, and I try to make my best to bring a little bit of spark of positivity and happiness into their day. This is my mindset. AI has no life to offer my students, to offer to me, to you. It can't honestly want to hear about your day. And definitely, it can't make you want to hear about its day back, because there is nothing to tell you about. That's the first thing. And the second thing is taking decisions. Of course, people would say, yes, but AI is very good for taking decisions. AI can actually help you analyze something. AI can give you pros and cons, definitely. It can help you analyze a situation, but it's very hard that you will be able to put everything into a prompt. What a human can tell you while knowing your life well will probably be quite beyond what AI can do. It definitely can role-play a job interview with you. It will never have the very full picture of your life. So for example, that very same student came to me stuck on her thesis topic, and she wanted to stay in Italy, also because her boyfriend is Italian and apparently he has no plan to leave. And so I told her, okay, let's pick the topics that will be actually more useful to stay here, and not just the ones that is more interesting for you. And so we went through the options that her professor had given her, and we landed on one. And months later, she went to a university job fair, and the construction company, one of the most important constructions company in Italy, looked at her thesis topic and wrote down her name on a separate sheet. And she texted me that this is something that they did only with her and not with anybody else. That's not a conversation that you can simulate with AI. It's not the same like following all the evolution of and the development of a person throughout all these years like I did with her. I felt this in my life too. A while back, I joined an accountability group that was made actually of mainly Russian women, and I journaled in Russian. At the time, I was stuck in Italy, and I needed something to keep my sanity, and so I thought, okay, I need to journal, maybe, yes, why not? In Russian, yes. And so it was just writing genuinely personal stuff, uncensored. AI corrected everything, and then I would just take a picture of my entry and post it on the group. What made it work, actually, was knowing that the other people could understand what I was writing. Why? Because then I tried to do the same in another language that I didn't understand, and my motivation plummeted, completely disappeared from one day to another. The AI corrections was always there, but knowing that people could not actually relate to what I was writing was really, okay, then it doesn't make any sense for me. And I'm sure that I am not the only person in the world that learns this way. So if you say, I'm disciplined enough and I don't need that, okay, good for you. But this video is not for you. This video is for other people who need some humans. It turned out so that being understood was the only thing that had mattered the whole time, actually. And it's also what makes my long-term students keep learning, long after they would have normally quit on their own. I really feel like I'm part of my students' mission. I'm not just a teacher. That's the one thing I hope every conversation with them carries. And for people who learn the way I do, this is really the biggest driver. If you want to discover more about how to use journaling for your language learning, check out the free guide in the link below. And if you want to discover how I managed to learn English decently in spite of the Italian school methods, check out this video.